Hi there, it's Lonnie with Crafty Traveler. I'm here today to first show you this quilt I made a few years ago. It's a panel cut up and done in an attic window design. I learned the design when I watched Missouri Star do the panel attic window design. And you can look on her website or YouTube for those instructions. The other thing I want to do today is show you how to put this crank on a featherweight. When we had a power outage a couple weeks ago here in Northern California, I had already purchased this crank mechanism, and my husband helped me put it on. So what I'm going to do is take this off, put the motor back on, and then show you how to put it on again. It doesn't do anything to the machine. The motor can be reapplied at any time, but when you don't have power, or as we like to do, go camping and not have power, I can still sew. So now I'm going to remove the crank and put the motor back on. So I'm going to show you the tools that I'm going to use. First, I'm going to use a small flathead screwdriver that is 1/8 by 2 inches. I have a medium flathead screwdriver. I have a 9mm box wrench and 11mm box wrench. I also am going to be using some sewing machine oil, paper towels in case the oil drips, and of course some scrap fabric so I know that it's working correctly. So the first thing I've done is actually removed this washer and bolt from the hand crank unit right here, and I'm going to remove that. And then I've got to remove this piece. Well, I tried to take this off and found out that I needed a 10mm box wrench. So, just to help you see it a little better, I'll light it up there a little bit. So now I've taken off the piece that holds the crank handle in place, and it has a bolt, a screw, and a washer. So I'm putting them all together so I don't lose them. The next step is to remove the wheel, and there is a little screw right here that I will undo with a small screwdriver. And ladies, if you're doing this, you may have to remember left turn, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. I bought this crank attachment from the Featherweight store, and I will put that link at the bottom. I'll also put the link to the attic window quilt using the panel. So to take the pan off, you just turn the larger bolt here. You don't have to do it underneath like that. I bought this little machine, probably 10 years ago on eBay, and it was in pretty bad shape, but the motor worked pretty well. And I sent it off to Dave's Featherweight factory to have it reconditioned and repainted. And he told me at that time that the motor was fair. So the reason I wanted to put this crank on this machine was because the motor needed a little help to turn the turn thing once in a while. And so that's why I elected to use this machine to put the crank on. And after you've taken off the large bolt, and I have a little piece of felt that goes in there not to scratch it, the pan just pops right off. And I'm going to keep all of that together. You leave the screw in so you have a way to put it back on. Now let's try and get this motor back mounted. Oh, by the way, I put the wheel back on, which really is easy to do. You just take the wheel and it slides right on the area where the crank was. Now I'm using the smaller screwdriver to open this area to turn this screw that will unfix the plug mount to the machine so that the wires can go through and be attached to the back of this plug mount. And that comes out like that. There is a screw there. These little pieces are what attach the wires from the motor to the plug mount. I'm not going to do that because it's not as easy as you think. The wires on the motor have to be threaded through this opening that will attach to the plug. And you have to be careful when you pull them out or put them in because they are fragile with these older machines. I've threaded the wiring down here for the motor, and it takes a little bit of doing to do that, manipulation. And then these wires will go into where the plug goes in and attach to these bolts to connect the plug to the wires. I'm not going to screw it all the way in because I'm just going to take it out again. But you can see the motor mounts right there, and then there's a little screw that goes and washer. The same screw and washer that used for the crank that goes into that area right there. And then the belt, of course, goes around the turn wheel, and you can adjust it any way you want. So that isn't that hard. It does take some time, and threading these wires in to this area did take some manipulation, but it's not really that hard to do. Now I'm going to take this off and put the crank back on. The attachment did come with instructions, and in the dismantling of it, first you take the pan off, which I did kind of second, but I was going in reverse. And then you remove the motor wire clamp and lamp wire clamp, which is this little gadget. And so the light won't work when you have a crank, by the way. So you have to use some other light source. And that's a good time to oil it, and I've already done that. So we've taken those things off. And we remove the screw holes, the motor that removes the motor. We've removed the motor already. Pulling the wires through carefully because they are fragile. There is an optional light kit with instructions, but I didn't get that. Next, you would clean this platform with Windex or something, with paper towels real well, in case any oil got on that area. And we would take this piece off, the wheel off. And then we're going to work in reverse and put this wheel back on. Okay, now we're going to put the wheel back on the unit. This is a good time to put a little oil behind the collar. There's this bolt that sticks out, and then there's this collar. And if you turn it this way, you might be able to see it a little better. Just a drop of oil in there. And then to put the wheel back on, you slide it back on, and then you have the bolt with the washer. Now it's important with this washer that there are little prongs on there. You see the little prongs, I hope? Well, those need to be pointed down, and on the wheel there are two little openings, and these little prongs need to go down into those little openings. Like that. So they stay there. If they don't go into the openings, they're not going to engage the wheel to turn the shaft for the needle to go up and down. The other little idiosyncrasy of this is that this little screw that's in the bolt that tightens down needs to be loosened up enough so that it's flush with the bolt. Otherwise, it won't engage correctly. So, putting the bolt back on, hand tightening it, and then it's always good to try and check, and the needle will go up and down once that's tightened, and then tighten this little screw. Again, it takes a little manipulation to get that in correctly and locked down so that when you turn the wheel, the needle goes up and down. Sorry, I don't have a light. Well, I had a little interruption. Come here. I want to introduce you to my puppy, Snickers. See, hi, Snickers. Yeah. Oh, it's okay. He is a little party-colored schnauzer. He's 2.5 years old. And he just snuck in here. It's a good interruption. Yeah, he's a good boy. Yeah, he's a good boy. You sit down. Okay. So you're holding the bolt. I'm holding it with my fingernail actually on this side here inside, and I'm turning this bolt to the right or clockwise. Until it's finger tight. If you wanted to turn it a little bit more, you could use the wrench. and that's secure. All right. Now this piece goes on here, and this piece attaches inside one of the prongs. For a better word, I don't know, spokes. Okay, now putting the crank back on, you thread it through a spoke. Oops, don't lose your washer. And the bolt. And find the right opening and turn it down. Finger tight would be good. A little bit tighter might be better. And you can do that with a wrench. Not too tight that if you were to try and take it apart again, it would be too difficult for you. Okay, after tightening this down quite a bit, then you can turn it. It turns very well. The needle goes up and down. There's usually 3 needle stitches per rotation. If you can't see the needle, there. Okay. Now I'm going to put the bobbin and the thread back up and show you how it stitches. Before I thread the machine, I want to put this little electrical plug unit back in, and it just sits right back in there and has a screw. It's not attached to any wires, but you want to keep it in there for future use in case you wanted to put the motor back on. So after you've gotten the crank back on and you know that it's working properly, you need to put the pan back on the bottom, and that just kind of fits in place. You've got to get the little screw through the hole like that. There it is. Sorry, I don't have a better lighting. And then I put the little red felt washer and the bolt on there. And then tighten it down. And then tighten that up, finger tightness. Just like that. And there it is. And now I can rethread it and show you how it actually sews. Okay, so the bobbin is in, the thread is threaded, and turning the crank. Hopefully you can see that it does sew. The trick is to coordinate the cranking and kind of hold your fabric at the same time. But it is sewing. You may not want to do a whole piece, a whole quilt on it, but you can sew little things. And there are the stitches. See? Okay. Now, 2 things that I do to help myself go a little easier. One thing is I use these Schmidt's quick threading needles. Okay, can you see that? I buy them on Amazon, 5 or 6 packs at a time. And the good thing is you don't have to thread the needle by looking at it. You place the thread behind the needle, it clicks into place, and you've got a threaded needle. You don't have to see. The other thing is that with this attachment, it doesn't really run the bobbin. So I have a sidewinder bobbin winder to wind my bobbins. And it can be plugged in, or it can use battery. So that's what I do for bobbins. But when the power's out, or when I'm out camping and I want to sew something, I can. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you'd like to see more of my videos about arts, crafts, quilting, sewing, and traveling, please click like and subscribe and click the little bell for notification. Thank you for watching and stay crafty!